You come to Flamingo Land for the 10 inversion Intamin coaster, but you stay for the Wallaby Walk and the baby hippo.
There were so many babies.
The baby hippo was mad cute. And a baby giraffe.
It's a baby park. There's lots of babies.
And baby wallabies. And baby kangaroo.
Baby mandrills.
Baby everything. But the mandrills were kind of scary. Those are the ones running around causing havoc, right?
They're like screaming at each other.
Like always fighting. Yeah, that was wild. Anyway, today we're talking about Flamingo Land, which is North England's exquisite theme park. I really did like it, though. I had a great time.
I liked it, too. I had a really nice time. And that's like you said, you go there like for the roller coasters, you end up staying for all the cute animals. And but like in preparation for this episode, I always want to make sure that we are covering the most interesting qualities of a park. So Flamingo Land was not a park that I knew a whole lot of information about just off the cuff, at least not like recent information or old information, really just recent information. But did you know that like it was originally a country club? Like in the 30s, it was closed, it was abandoned, and it was purchased by a entrepreneur who used to own a bunch of movie theaters. So he sold off his movie theater empire to purchase Flamingo Land and turn it into a zoo. It was Flamingo Park was the original name. Flamingos were one of the first animals that they had on the grounds, and so they named the park.
And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. And today's episode is about Flamingo Land. And as we already said, this is kind of located on an country club in North England in the hills where it always rains and it's quite cold. But there's a really, really cute theme park here, and the history of it's quite a wild. We're going to discuss it just a little bit before we start talking about the park.
Yeah,
in more detail.
I would say there isn't
one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So go ahead.
There's not a whole lot in the park to talk about. Like it's a pretty straightforward situation. It's not like there's a ton of like immense historical details with the park, although they do have a fascinating history of coasters, of collecting and redistributing fairground coasters. But yeah, it does have an interesting kind of objective history that dates back to well before they started operating major rides and roller coasters and stuff.
Well, I think one of the main things is that Flamingo Park, which is of course the older name, like we discussed, kind of pioneered the whole marine park, or like having live aquatic mammals like orca and dolphins in their care for the UK, which I actually did not realize prior to doing a quick search for a podcast episode today. So they were the first park in the country to house dolphins in 1963, which like my dad's from 1963. That's a long time ago. And they had a killer whale in 1968. That didn't last very long. Cuddles was a killer whale in a small tank.
Cuddles.
The tank's still there today, by the way. They use it for the sea lion show. And it's actually quite an interesting stadium setup, because the stadium setup is kind of like half indoor, half outdoor. And then depending on the weather conditions, they can do like shows in the smaller part of the pool in the back inside, which is more like a warehouse that's nicely dressed up these days, or outside in the more amphitheater looking area, which is the bigger part of the tank. But either way, the tank was never big. I'm amazed they house the orca in there. But back in the day, all these parks, if you look at Knott's Berry Farm or Hershey Park or Great Adventure, like all these parks had dolphins and whatnot. Magic Mountain had dolphins in the smallest pools. Anyway, so there was no exception to the first parks introduced that in the UK, being Flamingo Land. So yeah, that's kind of one of those things. The orca did not stay there for very long. Cuddles was kind of aggressive with the tank mates. Wasn't a lot of space to avoid each other anyway. So he was sold to the Dudley Zoo and Castle in 1971, and then passed away in 1974. pretty common timeline for captive orcas in that era.
Yeah, they had
wanted interesting.
To...
I had no idea they had one. Yeah,
I know. You're the orca guy in this family, and
I know
here
the amount of parks that I've been to
you
have
about
orcas.
Cuddles the orca when we were researching
because Legoland Windsor had an orca, Winnie, which is like more legendary orca, I think, and then Ocean Park Hong Kong, of course, with orca. Like there's been orcas all over the place.
Reno Aventura, of course,
Six Flags Mexico, yeah. Many places I've been have had a killer whale. There really was that era where everyone had needed to have a killer whale, but nobody could actually take care of one except for the big boy parks like SeaWorld.
This was before SeaWorld Orlando, this era of Flamingo Park.
But of course, after San Diego, because San Diego is like the pioneer of that. Yeah. Anyway, so in 1974, Flamingo Land kind of became more amusement ride focused. Actually, I guess it started in the 60s when they had like a traveling fun fair that would pass through. But in the 70s was when the park really started focusing on building permanent attractions. So they really do have a clear like amusement ride side of the park and a zoo side, which I guess is the original side. So in 1974, the park renamed itself as a zoo and amusement park and then changed the name from Flamingo Park to Flamingo Land as we know it today as part of an extensive marketing campaign. Which I'm always kind of surprised when it's such a small name change for it to be such a big deal. But I guess back in the day, there really weren't as many parks they were competing with. So it really was a big deal.
Yeah, I feel like they just changed the name for the sake of changing it to highlight the change in business model that they were about to embark on. And unfortunately, like the park still wasn't very profitable. Like they spent all of the 70s pretty much losing money. And then one of the former park directors, Robert Gibb, purchased the park from the original owner, and it was during his ownership and management in the 80s and early 90s that led to the park being profitable. And that was when we started seeing like interesting, like really pertinent rides, pertinent to like our kinds of conversations about Flamingo Land. But he passed away suddenly in 1995, and his 18-year-old son, Gordon, took over the park and still operates the park today. So
I feel like you can kind of tell that it's a family affair in a way, because it feels, when I was there, it felt a lot more intimate. It felt very much like it had like kind of a personal soul into it. And in the UK, we're no strangers to massive chain theme parks that are corporate and in a way kind of corporately tacky. Merlin, but it felt like it had identity. It felt like people were there, were kind of excited to be there.
A lot of character, actually.
Yeah, a lot of character. Strangely, more than I ever expected. Especially the original part of the park. The right side of the park is, I think, always been kind of sterile, but the original part of the park, and of course you have the whole entertainment thing going on. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but they were like really invested in the pirate show. That was the whole thing. So, but anyway, so Flamingo Land started adding fairground rides really in the mid 80s, and it worked their way up to more permanent coasters in the early 90s, the coasters that we're kind of familiar with today. So by 1991, the park had 6 coasters already, including looping coasters from Pinfari, Vekoma, and Schwarzkopf. And I think most people that have been at RCDB for years know that the Vekoma was, of course, the Bayern Curve corkscrew Vekoma. Currently still lives on the south of France, not far from where we have family. We have never been. And then there was the Schwarzkopf triple loop, the iconic Wiener looper.
No, that's the Bullet.
Oh, sorry.
It's Wiener looper.
Yes, they had both actually, but I'm jumping ahead here. I'm jumping ahead the timeline. You're good. So they had the iconic Wiener looping, which is renamed Bullet by Flamingo Land. Anyway, and the ride still uses that name these days.
Yeah, that little bit of Flamingo Land influence still lives on.
I kind of forgot they really are like a legacy Schwarzkopf park between those two coasters, because then, in 2000 is when they acquired Dryer Looping.
But then it was only there for 6 years. It was a relatively short period. I think acquiring it was a smart choice for them.
Maybe because,
maintenance-wise, because they were already in possession of one.
When I was really starting to get into roller coasters, this is when Flamingo Land had still the Vekoma and Dryer Looping. So maybe that's why in my head I was, that's such a prominent ride to me. Because I think I mentioned even during our visit there, like, oh yeah, man, like I wish they still had the triple loop here. In my head, that's like peak, not like peak as in the park's operational status, but just like in my mind, it's like that's something I really associate with Flamingo Land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, they're like the major coasters that they had, the corkscrew, Bullet, Magnum Force, the indoor Pinfari, Thunder Mountain. Like those were rides that I remember seeing pictures of a lot on Roller Coaster Database and like associating
It really was
with the
kind
park.
of a mismatch, and in a way that tradition still lives on. But yeah, for those that are curious, the American dryer looping that we see in Indiana Beach today is the same coaster that we're talking about. So of course, in between, it had a little stop at La Feria, killed someone, and then moved on to Indiana. Who's next?
People, I think. Yep. Or was it just one person? I can't remember.
I actually don't exactly remember how many people died.
I can't remember. I think at least one person. I think 2 people may have been critically injured. But anyways, the Flamingo Land sold both of the Schwarzkopfs to Grupo Magico, which is the parent company of La Feria, and Selva Magica. And after the incident with the triple loop in La Feria, that company disbanded. And they sold off the parks. The La Feria closed and then reopened as a new amusement park, as Azteca City Park, and they have like a new Vekoma family invert, and then Selva Magica is now operated by Zoo Marine, which is there's a park in France, or not France, a park in Italy that has like a Schwarzkopf looping star, and obviously like a zoo and a marine park, but yeah, so there's a lot of the major coasters that Flamingo Land used to operate are still operating. All the big ones. The Pinfari Looper you can still enjoy at Breen theme park in on the western side of the United Kingdom. Obviously, the Schwarzkopfs are both still intact. The Corkscrew, like you said, is on the French Riviera at one of those Luna parks, so it only runs like 2 weeks out of the year, but you can still ride it. It's the last one of 2 of the remaining Vekoma Bayern Curve corkscrews. The other one's at Beto Carrera World in Brazil.
That's right, because Super Manege has been closed in Canada now too. God, both Canadian ones are dead now. God, it happens quick.
Yeah. But then so 2005 was like a big turning point for Flamingo Land, because that is when they made a conscious effort to kind of rebrand. They'd worked their way up from like fairground rides to like permanent rides that were maybe traveling rides but were stationary for the park, and then the next step from that was like truly permanent coasters, like custom rides and like, you know, concrete footers and stuff, because even though they had roller coasters that were like permanently at the park, there were still a lot of fairground rides and traveling rides. So 2005 was the year that they kind of like they cleaned house, and like they sold off the Schwarzkopfs and traded in all of their temporary rides for the Vekoma booster bike prototype Velocity, which is now their oldest coaster at the ripe old age of 20, and has been operating at the park since 2005. And it was like the beginning of a trend of the park of building major permanent roller coasters, and something that they've kept up with. But that's where we'll probably pretty much start our conversation in relationship to our actual visit to Flamingo Land, which there's a lot of interesting roller coasters and things to do at Flamingo Land. And your day can pretty much be dictated by whatever happens to be open at any given moment at the park, not necessarily taking things in the order in which they come. I think we went to Sick first, and then it was closed, and then we went to Velocity, and then went back to Sick, something like that. I remember.
So before we dive into that, I want to make a quick note, of course, that this is our 4th installation of our Great British Road Trip. So we did go to UK for about 2 weeks, and we hit a bunch of big theme parks, including, of course, Flamingo Land. And we have already published 3 episodes. We've had the Alton Towers episode, the Drayton Manor and Paulton Spark episode, as well as a Thorpe Park episode. So make sure to check those out as well. If after you're done listening to this one, this will probably be one of our shorter ones.
Yeah.
But definitely check out the other ones. We've got some pretty strong opinions about stuff, and we're gonna continue this series. I have a couple more parks to go. Of course, we got Blackpool to go. We have Fantasy Island and the other park in Skegness. I guess we'll just do a quick mention of that park.
Pleasureland. Yeah. We'll do the Skegness parks, and then we have the Great Yarmouth parks.
Exactly.
Pleasurewood Hills. Yep.
So. There's still some stuff to come in the series, but I just want to, give everyone a friendly reminder to check those out.
We're kind of almost to the halfway point, or maybe we are at the halfway point. Well, maybe not
quite. This is the halfway point.
Is it? Because we still we got
7 episodes. This is number 4.
to do.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as talking up, really, when you talk about Flamingo Land from a coaster perspective, coasters are pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot to do there ride-wise besides the coasters. They've got some interesting stuff. They've got like some monorails and train rides and stuff, like a little Severn Lamb people mover that goes over the zoo area, and a larger monorail that connects the zoo area to the theme park area, because it's a big park and there's a lot of ground to cover.
That's the slowest monorail in the world, right?
Yeah, I know. It was a lot faster to just walk. But yeah, we didn't even plan on spending that much time in the zoo, and we ended up spending twice as much time in the zoo as we did in the park.
Yeah, because we rode all the coasters at least a couple times. Some even like, I think I rode sick like 4 or 5 times. Like I rode sick like a sickening amount of times.
I was done after a couple of rides.
And then we rode Velocity a couple times, and I think Kumali a couple times. So we did pretty good. And then we still had, first we were like, okay, we're going to spend half the day there because the rides, we were there at open. We got all the rides in pretty quick. It went pretty well. And they were like, you know what, we'll just go and walk through the zoo for a little bit, get our steps in, check it out. And then we will, head to our next hotel, which is like a 4-hour drive or something. So we were prepared to only spend maybe like a couple hours there. We ended up we were there to almost close. I think the park closed at 4. We were there until 3. Like we did an impressively good job. Yeah, we were there for like 5 hours at least, which is pretty crazy.
The park is a great value. It really has a lot of substance. There's a lot to do there. And they've been consistent. I mean, Sick was their first major coaster edition in a while after they spent a lot of the mid 2000s and 2010s fleshing out the coaster collection. Because the year after they built Velocity, they built Kumali, which is their larger Vekoma SLC, the Happy Valley Shenlin layout. And this was an important period of time in Vekoma's timeline, because I can remember there being a lot of propaganda about the ride from Vekoma and from Flamingo Land about how Vekoma was sort of like turning a new chapter in their business model, and how like they were priding themselves on how smooth Kumali was going to be. And like they were specifically saying, like, we know like our SLCs, like we know that they're rough. We have a reputation for these rough rides, but like this is our new era. Like it's 2006 is the year that we build like the smoothest inverted coaster in the world. Like they had a lot of these big lofty claims. It's also the same year that Expedition Everest opened. I feel like 2006 was like a big year for Vekoma's reputation.
And like for the record, Kumali really does roll like a dream. I mean, it runs so well.
It's a perfect ride. It's a perfect ride. What do you think of Velocity? Because I thought it was great. It was better than I remember.
Oh, I love Velocity. Velocity was actually quite intense. I will say it shook a little bit more than I realized, but of course you're used to Tron, and Tron is like so incredibly smooth. Mm-hmm. And I've done Booster Bike and Toverland, the original of the product line, not far from the Vekoma factory. And that was of course a great ride, but I don't recall the shaky level of it, because I think last time we were there, we rode it. Either way, Velocity I think was really good because it is quite intense. I mean, you had that giant hill after the launch good, that giant hill, and then you just plow into a turn, and like, oh my god, the forces on that rider much more pronounced than I had expected, and the layout's decent length. Again, a little shakiness to it, but at this point, I guess cult character was anything too distracting. I'm not the biggest fan of the actual ride vehicles. I find them to be just a tiny bit restrictive. Like I'm a big guy. Yes, I'm tall. I have long legs. Got the Dutch height there, which is why I'm a little bit annoyed that even for tall people, it can be a pretty tight fit in order to clear the seats. But it's not like they modified it in like the one we rode in Guangzhou. There's one in Guangzhou that we rode that is the copy of Booster Bike, so the smaller version at Chamlang Paradise, and they had modified the restraints somehow, so where the pad that goes down to your knees was way lower. Maybe because the Chinese are in general not as tall and big as Westerners or Dutch people are. But either way, it was one of those things where I couldn't ride because there was just no way I was going to clear. At least Booster Bike and Velocity, not a problem clearing, but it's not the most comfortable. I feel like I really do have to get squished a little bit. But I like the ride. Yeah, I mean, to come back to your original question.
As big Tron fans, it's fun to kind of go back and ride basically the prototype.
Do like regional park Tron. Yeah, a more intense version of it.
The motorbikes feel so small and like flimsy compared to the massive, like sturdy, powerful feeling vehicles of Tron. But yeah, so Velocity and Kumali were like back-to-back editions for the park, and they were like a big flag in the sand for them. Like, we are going to build major permanent rides, custom for our park. And so Kumali, which I just think is a wonderful ride, and it has a great paint job. It's got everything going for it. That's like, was the follow-up to Velocity. What were your thoughts on it? Because I know you were a big fan.
Well, like I said earlier, Kumali is quite smooth for a Vekoma SLC. Layout-wise, I've of course done the layout before a couple times actually. I think I did the layout with the Helix, both of the original ones with the Helix, which are located in Chengdu
three times because we did Beijing. All of these Chinese ones first.
Yeah, so I've done the one with the bonus Helix, which is Beijing and is
Chengdu.
it the one in Chengdu? Yeah, okay, so I did those, and then I did the one in Shenzhen before it closed. Which is the same as Kumali. And I remember liking all of them, but Kumali, I think, ran just much better. It looks like they put a lot of care into it. They had magnetic brakes on it. It tracked very well. Mm-hmm. You can tell, I think, maybe prior to SICK, it was still by far like the star attraction. Like Kumali was, the big boy. Of course, now they have a 10er version Intamin. So maybe now it's second in command. Everyone likes to talk about SICK now around the park. Yeah. But I think Kumali was, for the longest time, really their big roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And the way it's situated on the water, at the edge of the park, it's a cool color scheme. It can use a little bit of love when it comes to like the repaint department, maybe. But overall, I mean, very satisfying. Ran very well. You can tell that this ride, they put money into it. Yeah, great ride. Probably my favorite ride at the park. Yeah, honestly.
Oh yeah, I think I would have to agree. What a great ride, and I love Velocity. Obviously, we're Vekoma boys. Like, we love our Vekoma coasters, and it's nice that like their Vekomas are such unique and like well-maintained coasters from, like we said, a very like important part of Vekoma's timeline. So that was 2005 was Velocity, 2006 was Kumali, 2007 they added the horrible little miniature kiddie coaster, the Zamperla
I believe I wrote that.
Coaster.
I cannot believe it. It was so uncomfortable. Oh my god, it was painful. I really thought I couldn't get into that, and then eventually I did manage to get myself in there.
We're having a terrible time because I was at the front, you were at the back, because those were the only seats left. And after I got off, I spun around and was like, "So how was that?" And then in 2009, they added Mumbo Jumbo, the SNS Screaming Squirrel, or not Screaming Squirrel, El Loco.
Yeah, I like that ride. Yeah. Ran pretty well. Has a decent present, really kind of complemented Kumali nicely. Mm-hmm. The park is terribly themed when it comes to the roller coaster part of the park.
African section.
Yeah, so like, even though the zoo itself is gorgeous and a beautiful landscape and there's lots to explore, lots to see, like walkways through the trees, all this nice stuff, right? The actual ride part of the park does feel a little sterile, and it's like a giant. It almost feels like, how do you explain it? Like a fairground parking lot. It just does
feel kind of like a fairground still.
Yeah. But Kumali and Mumbo Jumbo are like in their own tiny little corner, and it looks good, and the ride ran well in my opinion. I thought it ran well. I like these coasters. I think I like the newer one the best, of course, but I think I like the originals too. They're versatile, they do a lot, and it was fun to look at off ride. Capacity is not great, but what do you need at a park like Flamingo Land? So no complaints from me. No, I like the ride a lot.
Yeah, me too. And it's a great fit for the parks that it's in. That layout has covered the world. There's one in Beijing, there's one in Surfers Paradise, Australia, there's one in the UK, there's one in
France,
Indiana, there's one in France. Like, that layout has really covered the four corners of the earth. I'm actually surprised there's not
more of them, because they really are cute little versatile rides, and again, they look very spectacular. That
was Alan Schilke's baby. Like,
having your like beyond vertical drop, having your outward bank turns, inward bank turn, like a stall, a slow roll all the way across the ride spot. I think it's a genius little ride.
If you're a fan of RMCs and you love Iron Horse coasters and stuff, so much of the original DNA of RMC coasters are in that little layout. The little outward bank turn was the inspiration for doing that kind of stuff. The same sort of outward off-axis airtime hills and turns on RMCs. The little 0G roll that's like on a downward slope. Obviously, like beyond vertical drops and stuff, a lot of that was like Alan Schilke getting familiar with like what you can do with a roller coaster, even though it looks like you shouldn't be able to do it, and like breaking some of the rules, and then, plussing that up to like these giant roller coasters with these huge I-beams of track and long trains and high capacity and launches and so on and so forth. But so like as an RMC fan, it's fun to look at these layouts again and see like where some of our favorite RMC tricks got their start. But yeah, so that was 2009. That was their fourth major coaster. And then in 2011, they added two more coasters. They added Twistosaurus, I'm getting ahead of myself. 2011 was Zoom, the suspended Zamperla coaster. That was like a giant extended version of the little suspended airplane zigzag ride that you might have seen in some parks.
Just as miserable when it comes to leg rooms, with the idea of it with like the runway themed station with the little control tower and it kind of hovering over some of the midways in the park. I can appreciate what they did there. And I guess if we have to consider the fact that they added all these coasters in like super close succession. I mean, like 05, 06, 07, 09, 2011, and it's 2 again in 2013. I mean, like for a good 8 years here, they were just pumping out coasters. So I guess I could give them a little bit of a pass not having it thematically together, because at least their lineup was growing at like a rapid rate. And they at least tried to add some sort of thematic elements to it. They definitely got better at it later in the game, I think. But either way, I can appreciate the ride for what it is. I barely fit. It's uncomfortable. I probably will never, ever set foot on it again.
And we got to go twice.
It looks cute. You know, it looks cute. Yeah, you get to go. It must have been more than twice. At least it feels like it was more than twice.
It's just a long ride. It felt like forever. But yeah, normally we would cover a park and we would go things sort of in a circular fashion, like how you would come to a ride. But I wanted to do something different and talk about this park with the coasters like in a chronological order, because they all, like the park's current lineup just like came so fast, and they were so ambitious and adding all of these rides, like you said, in like very quick succession, to really flesh out the kind of ride roster that they were dreaming of when they were ready to graduate from fairground coasters and fun fair rides that they had acquired from other parks. So 2011, that was was Zoom. We rode a tiny version of it at Parque de Atracciones Madrid. That was just the little
I don't remember being that
version.
uncomfortable on it, but maybe I was that uncomfortable.
I'm sure the vehicles have been expanded to be more comfortable, because this, like a lot of the coasters that are currently at Flamingo Land, I think it was a prototype, or it was...
I guess that is a good way to get your rides for a decent price. You just prototyping it up. I
don't think... This is based on a kiddie ride. It's like a suspended kiddie whip that Zamperla has, where it's like 6 or 8 vehicles just on a little paperclip track. And then they were like, well, we have this ride system, we might as well make a coaster out of it. And I think Flamingo Land was one of the first. I don't remember the vehicles on the one in Spain being uncomfortable. So I'm sure that they were just expanded on, like figuratively and literally, as they grew the product line. But then, so 2013, we saw 2 more Zamperla coasters. They were in their Zamperla era. They went from Vekoma to SNS to Zamperla. I'm a little sad that they didn't just keep building SNS and Vekoma coasters forever and ever.
But who knows? Now we have a big intimate looper.
But now
so
we have a giant
always...
intimate, so like the next, who knows?
No, I doubt they can afford a new era of Vekoma.
No.
But anyway.
No.
I don't know if the attendance is quite there.
They could only afford Vekoma when everybody like hated Vekoma, and now that everybody loves Vekoma, it's probably just not possible. But yeah, so in 2013 they added 2 more Zamperla coasters, Twistosaurus, which is their small like family spinning coaster. It's actually a nice layout, like it's a decent size. I would say
it's cute theming. It's in a cute little dinosaur themed area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it.
And then Hero, their Zamperla, also opened the same year. The Flyer, the Volare, and you didn't mind it.
Oh, I loved it. Don't be hating on.
You're stupid.
I actually really liked it. No, seriously, I don't usually like for Volaris and Time Warp, like rest in pieces, babe. But I actually did like Hero. I don't know what it was about it. I mean, I was in the middle. I did choose that seat carefully, so maybe I had the hardline experience. But no, I really didn't hate it that much. Like, yeah, there's a little bit terrifying how you slam into those corners and the turns and whatnot. And of course, you're like kind of rattling around the cage, and you really have to keep yourself kind of in place and not get too hurt. But all things considered, I kind of had a ball. I kind of enjoyed it. I kind of enjoyed the chaos. I kind of forgot how chaotic the Volare is.
I think it's
a great coaster, maybe not, but I kind of enjoyed it.
It is one of the last Volaris that were ever built. Like the one in Canada's Wonderland opened in like 2004. Or something. This one was almost 10 years later, And
maybe they have improved.
It was told like they were advertising that it was like a better version. It was sort of like the SLC all over again. It was Vekoma all over again.
So like, who advertised these rides being better? The park or the manufacturer?
Park and the manufacturer together.
I had to see some of this. I've never seen this marketing.
Improvements were made. And I think you're right. I think you have a point about like getting these rides for a good price when the reputation is bad, and then challenging the manufacturer to build a better version for the same price so that the reputation can get better. Because I distinctly recall being told by the park that Hero was a better flyer than the others.
Yeah, okay, but did it tell you that because you were there with a theme park enthusiast group?
No, this was being advertised. Like, this was on their Facebook and shit.
Really?
I'm serious. And then with Kumali...
For Kumali, Facebook wasn't even around yet.
Well, Kumali, it was a documentary.
Huh. Okay, I would like to see this documentary.
That was on local it was on television. It was literally like a construction documentary.
Why would the locals, no offense to this part of the UK, with the York area, right? Absolutely no offense, but there's not much to pick from. Like, why are we over here worried about the Vekoma? Let's just be happy we have a giant Vekoma. You know what I'm saying? Like,
had a
there's not much around there. Who are we comparing it to?
If I was Vekoma and it was mid-2000s, I would probably want to set the record straight about what I was building now. Since, you know, the first 10 years of Vekoma SLCs weren't exactly positively regarded. But honestly, that ride layout has always been good, because the one in Happy Valley opened in 1998 and it was great. It's always been good, right up until they demolished it, the one in Shenzhen. So I think it just had something to do with like them setting their sights on higher things, better things, once they had money in the situation. But yeah, so like you said, like between 2005 and 2013, they added quite a few coasters. They were up to 9 or 10 coasters, give or take. And then Sick was their 10th coaster. But then last year, the two smallest coasters, they had these two tiny kiddie coasters that had been around for quite some time, kind of the final vestiges of the old fairground rides. They sold those off, bringing their kiddie coaster count down to just the Zamperla Runaway Mine Train kiddie coaster, and then like Zoom, and then from there like slightly larger, bigger rides. But Sick is really cool. That's a really cool ride for them, and I'm very happy that they have it. What do you guys think of Sick? We have a guest. We have our cat Bill.
I'm not sure if Bill is in the video, but here's Bill.
Bill is. I don't know if you know if there's video from the intro.
I think Shandu popped by yours earlier.
Shandu was in the video earlier, and he's just like sitting there for the intro, and I'm like, okay.
It's funny because every time we record a podcast, we have a little side track where we take the little colors off of the cats because they have like a little jingle to them, and even though we can edit it out into an extent, sometimes it just needs to be kind of awkward. But so now there's an occasional cat in our lap, or now I just came home from being gone for a few weeks, so these cats are like all over me, and like Bill could not leave me alone, so I took his little collar off, and now he's in the podcast. Either way, so yes. So what I thought about Sick is that Sick was a pretty sick addition for this park, because I do think the size for this park is pretty wild. I mean, consider everything else is there. Kumali, like I said earlier, was like the big star for, I mean, honestly, let me do a quick math here, 16 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be the big star. And so having finally a follow-up coaster to that, I think like a true follow-up, like a bigger coaster, it's nice. They have this fashion brand that is what's Sick as a fashion brand. Now, I don't know much about the fashion brand, but they, of course, had like a little fashion store. And was it David Beckham? There was some sort of famous soccer player that was part of it. And then the station, even though the station is rudimentary, kind of basic, which made me think maybe they chose the theme later, they added like a bunch of fashion flags and it's like, you know, like music and disco lights. Like, that's kind of a cute vibe. The trains themselves, I like them for the legroom, and I like them for most of the ride because they're just lap bars and they're quite simple. But then you get to the part of the ride where you have the quadruple inline followed by one more inline, and hanging in your restraint like that, especially because it was cold. We were like the only people riding it at one point because it wasn't that busy. And then, you know, like it just goes through those rolls kind of sluggishly. So that for me was kind of painful. And I know it was bad for Alex. Alex at one point didn't ride anymore, and I just kept rewriting.
Yeah, I was like, I'm done.
Alex was like, I'm done.
My thighs were so sore.
because the staff was so sweet. They were like, "Oh my god, you guys want to ride again? I'll ride again. Here, sit here." And like they were just like so excited for us. And Alex was like, "Actually, I can't anymore. I need to stop."
Yeah, I was like, "I'm
So I wrote
tapping out.
another
I'm
time,
sorry."
just for
I took pictures
good
of
measure.
you. I was like, "Oh, I got a picture of him on the ride."
So no, I do like the ride. I think it's a good fit. Thematically speaking, it's fine. For Flamingo Land, let's face it, none of the coasters there look that great. Everything is kind of the same rudimentary, interesting choice, fences and whatnot. It's really funny to me because when you go to the ride part of the park, you really wouldn't think much of it. But then the zoo is so beautiful and so gorgeous, which is what's so funny about it. Really, at least I can tell that they spend the most of their money at the zoo, which is always a good thing. In this day and age of having theme park rides alongside of a zoo. There's plenty of parks that let the zoo part kind of retire and look ugly, but this park, I really feel like they've been really investing in the zoo, so that looks really great. So that's maybe, aesthetically speaking, it's fine. It doesn't have to be any more than that. The park has never looked good for the rides, compared to everything else that's there. It looks fine. It looks okay. It doesn't look bad. Overall, having then ridden the original 10 version Colossus at Thorpe Park a few days later. That is like so nicely spruced up with kind of like landscaping and tunnels and trees and whatnot. So that was, of course, I kind of help us up with compared it to. But overall, SICK is a great addition. Come on, like, these are two different kinds of parks. This is a great, great, great addition. 16 years after Kumali, they've got another big winner. And I know plenty of people that prefer this over Colossus. So a great coaster. I just, restraint-wise, I thought it was a little bit awkward in those rules. I guess I'm repeating myself here, but...
No, I think a lot of people prefer SICK over Colossus because a lot of people hate Colossus. And Colossus is not that great for us either because those trains,
I like the trains really better compact. Still on SICK. Yeah.
SICK, yeah. And
it's just that one part of the ride.
Yeah. I like having upper body support. So like lap bars with nothing to hold on to. With SICK, I kept feeling myself like I would want to pull myself up on the barrel rolls because the lap bars are so small. They're so low profile that I feel like they put too much pressure on one part of my leg instead of distributing it out. This ride is already quite old, technically, because it was manufactured in the mid-2010s and sold to Hopi Hari in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Right? Is it Sao Paulo? Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Brazil for sure.
And Hopi Hari planned obviously on assembling the ride, but it was delayed and delayed and delayed, and the ride was in pieces. And then finally they sold it due to financial issues. And always the opportunistic shopper, Flamingo Land snapped it up and built it, and it's amazing. It's a beautiful high budget ride for some
people. I think kind of discussed like, well, why would you build that after Colossus already exists in the country for so long and as a legend? But I don't think people realize that these parks are nowhere near each other. Yep. Like, let's face it, how many people that are visiting Flamingo Land are visiting Thorpe in the same year? None. It's like maybe the enthusiasts and that's it,
The Venn diagram is just two circles.
Yeah.
But people have no idea. From like looking at it from the world, you think like, wow, the fact that two of Intamin's 10 inversion coasters, because there's not many, there's only like 6, if that. One of them's in China, another one's in Russia. Like, they're not exactly accessible coasters. And they have 2 of them in the United Kingdom. It's a relatively small country. I mean, they don't even have 2 Vekoma boomerangs.
And let's face it, I mean, the layout has changed enough. Like now, like on Colossus, the first drop is really not much to write home about. You have like kind of an elevator turn that turns into a drop. But on this thing, there's a quick lift, like a steep drop over the top, and then like a really sharp curve towards the bottom of the drop. They've definitely made layout improvements where I think 6 layout is like perfected compared to, being an original that they have kind of spruced up with some layout changes. Mm-hmm. So all things considered, I do like SICK a lot. I do think like the landscaping was decent.
It's a great ride, and both installations in the UK are better than the one at Chimelong Paradise.
100%. I guess that's kind of the lesson here, huh? Another Chimelong Paradise equivalent that was not as good as in Chimelong Paradise. Yeah. Even though Chimelong Paradise also has that like tropical look. Yeah.
And like, because I had already ridden Colossus when we went to Chimelong, but you hadn't. So that was your first experience.
I mean, like, to be honest, guys, like my UK timeline is so different from most enthusiasts because I've been to 30 1+ theme parks in China before everyone went to a single theme park in the UK.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of my comparisons come with like prior experiences in other countries, I guess.
Like you rode G5 in Taiwan before you rode Oblivion.
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of this going on.
Both of us actually both rode Oblivion in Taiwan and then rode the OG 6 months later, respectively.
Yeah.
Except we did it 10 years apart.
Yeah, true. I never did an episode about that. Now think about it. I guess we can do like a mishmash episode at some point where we just throw a bunch of little adventures into one. Yeah. You know, rattle them off like 5 minutes per adventure. We need to do
an episode where you talk about your Asia coaster layovers, because you've done the Taiwanese parks and you did Lotte World on layovers. And Hair Razor and Ocean Park.
Yeah, which we did actually discuss that. Remember, because you did Hyperia, so we did Hyperia, Hong Kong to Hyperia. That's the episode we did last season. Yeah. But anyway, so we'll do like a little rapid fire, smaller park episodes.
Coaster layover stuff. But yeah, that's the coaster lineup for Flamingo Land. Very well rounded.
And they have one more cool ride we should discuss.
Interesting stuff. Oh yeah, so the Flume ride.
Yeah, the Flume ride.
Someday I'll ride this ride. It was closed when I went in 2015, and now they're rebuilding it. Basically, it's becoming a new version of itself for 2026. And, you know, with driving around and stuff and wet clothes, I guess there's no guarantee that we would have necessarily ridden it. But I love the idea of this ride.
No, I think I would have even been out to ride it, because the whole premise of the ride being like a giant shoot that has mostly just river parts, and you go through like a lion exhibit, and then you go past the giraffes and past the hippos. No, not the hippo. Yeah, no.
What were they called again? The hippos.
No, the rhinos. Sorry.
Rhinos.
Let me like being a children's book here. Rhinos, and then you go past. I think the hippo too, and then you have your lift hill over by some more giraffes, I guess, and the hippos, and then you make a turn and you have a big drop. Now it's not as big as it used to be, I guess, but a drop into a lagoon that's over by Kamali, and they make it back to the station. I think it's a phenomenal ride. Come on, this is the kind of stuff that everyone wants to see. You know, like a big boat ride through animal exhibits.
I'm very excited
drop
for
at the
them
end.
When
that's
they open it, because they're spending a lot of, basically a full teardown rebuild.
100%
of this ride, which is when it opens, it's poised to be like the signature ride in the park with some good advertising and marketing. Like, it'll be a really well-regarded attraction, something really unique and special for the park that highlights their commitment to sturdy, major theme park rides and also really cool animal exhibits.
So then I guess it's a great transition into talking a little bit about the zoo. I know we're mostly like a theme park coaster podcast, and we're going to also just focus on that the most this episode. But the zoo is super impressive. Like, if you ever were to look at the map of the park itself, the roller coaster part of the park is quite small. But then the zoo itself is massive. You have, the Lost Kingdom, which I guess is its own part of the zoo, which is where the boat ride is.
The zoo is so big, it has its own themed areas. It's not like in most parks that have a zoo. The zoo is one area, but the zoo is really like several areas. It's almost like a second gate.
In fact, it's so big you can spend so much time there, because we were roaming around that zoo for at least 2, if not 3 hours. Like, we were there for a long time.
Yeah.
So where we entered the zoo was over where the swinging ship is, next to Komali. And then there is a new monkey exhibit, which is really nice. And then there's like a lookout area that goes over the giraffes area. And they're building a new, longer lookout walkway that also connects then the new water ride. But we took the more normal walkway, I guess, that was open because of construction, past some giraffes. There's white rhinos, and then on the other side of the water ride, which is still all part of the Lost Kingdom, they have zebras, the usual like savannah stuff, more giraffes, ostriches. Which ostriches are always like freaking me out a little bit. They're like dinosaurs, like who needs Jurassic Park? Like, dinosaurs are already in Flamingo Land,
and you can see them. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how nobody else is freaked out by them. I'm always freaked out by them. Like, they're like literal dinosaurs. Like,
they're
how can you not see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, they're scary animals. And then there's the part where you can look at the hippos, which you can see them from like on a platform from above, and they're mad cute. I have photos of the hippos.
Hippo is so amazing.
Super cute. Yeah. There's a train ride that goes all around it, around this part of the zoo. And then you have the rest of the zoo, which is really big. And there's a really cool exhibit that we went to that's kind of hard to find. It's like way out there past the monkey exhibit. What are those monkeys called again? Buffoons? No.
Baboons.
Baboons.
Close enough.
And there's a black rhino exhibit, which black rhinos are super rare, so that's really cool. And that was actually quite a nice exhibit, except for the black rhino was like sleeping inside, so we kind of peeked through the glass.
We couldn't see him very well.
We couldn't really see him.
But
we kind of stumbled upon the exhibit, even though it's one of their major exhibits for the park. But the zoo is so massive that like it took us like an hour plus to get there. And then we stopped at the tigers and the lions. And usually there's tigers in this really big exhibit. Now it's half tigers, half lions, because the lions belong in the part where they're doing construction. Anyway. We saw the red panda, which is cute. We saw camels, which camels are cute. We saw baboons, of course, which are really scary. But we looked at them for a long time because they were all like, this is normal for baboons, right? But they like run around and like fight, and they're super tutorial and like screaming and causing like mad drama. Like they're so dramatic. Oh my God, they're more dramatic than flight attendants. And then there was a meerkat exhibit, and there's a little monorail that goes around those, which was actually not open on this visit. But that was pretty cute. And I'm just kind of rattling it off, I guess. But there were so many things to look at.
The best was the wallaby walkway.
The wallaby walk was so amazing.
Wallaby walk had several species of wallaby. And they're just like, and you're just in there with you. Like, there's so many of them.
And, oh my God, yeah. They can just walk around and they just hopping around. You're like, am I allowed to be here? But
there's
sections
allowed to be there. That have like little ankle high ropes, like where all the grass and stuff is, but the walkways.
But they just I think to guide people because they hop all over the place. Yeah. And then there's like all those little babies, and then the baby will like dive into the little pouch. I mean, it was like strangely amazing. It was so good.
It was amazing.
Like we said earlier, like we came for sick, of course, but then we really stayed for the wallaby walk.
It was amazing being so up close to those animals because it's not a petting zoo. It's not like you're walking around with farm animals. Like these are wild animals. These are animals from a part of the world that we've never even been to, and you can just walk right up to them and pet them, and there's a ton of them, and it's massive, and it's all unsupervised. They're very trusting, and they just expect you to go and like have respect for these animals. So it's just really cool. It's really amazing. It's something that Flamingo Land can do that like a bigger park or like in a park in a bigger population center probably wouldn't be able to get away with because people are terrible, and you couldn't just trust a bunch of random people in an enclosure with dozens of wild animals. You just couldn't trust people to be respectful and responsible under those kinds of circumstances.
And I do want to say that this park kind of does have some areas that have like, how to explain it? So technically speaking, like the area where you enter is kind of Metropolis, where you have Sick and like Velocity and stuff. And then you have your Lost Kingdom part is also where you have Kumali and Mumbo Jumbo. Then you have the Riverside one, which is where the race cars are at, and Hero, and like the shoot to shoot. It's kind of like a mixed back corner. You have Splosh, which is where you have the shoot to shoot, not the shoot to shoot, the splash battle
splash
ride
pad and the flip
splash pad
ride.
Yeah, so it's actually quite a few. And then you have, of course, Dino Stone Park, which is then like all the dinosaur themed stuff. So even though I feel like thematically it's kind of like a mixed bag and not super high quality for where the rides are at, there are technically areas. I just wanted to throw it in there before I forget that thought.
That little area by the manor, by the house, which is closer kind of to the zoo.
All right, talk about the Muddy Duck Farm.
Yeah,
that was
Muddy
cute.
Duck Farm.
I haven't even talked about the emus yet, and they had those other ones that were like emus, but they're not emus. What are they called again? You had the ride. They're from Rias, from Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
There is
penguins,
actual flamingos, and they're in alpacas. There's so many animals there. Oh my God, guys! Like there's so many animals.
It just kept getting bigger and better.
And then there's a giant like walk, like a treehouse walkway, I guess I want to call it. It's like an elevated pier that goes over the exhibits. Mm-hmm. And this side of the zoo, and it's massive. Oh my God, I'm not gonna lie, this park is like wild. Like, it's so much going on. The penguin stuff was cool.
That was one of the nicest penguin exhibits I've ever seen.
If you just want to go to like a nice zoo, because then they have also the Children's Planet, which is like a really large kiddie area that also has that kind of theme to the same like treehouse stuff. If you want like a really nice zoo experience in the UK, I would totally recommend coming to Flamingo Land. Like, ride the coasters a bit, because of course we're coaster enthusiasts, but then hang out in the zoo for a while. Like that was actually one of the highlights of our trip, believe it or not. Maybe because we just weren't expecting much of it, but because we weren't so focused on the zoo. But then I love being so pleasantly surprised. We're like, we had a ball. We spent so much time walking around that zoo. We had a great time.
They had just some really fun, like unexpected, like they also had like livestock. They had pigs and stuff. They had guinea pigs.
Yeah, the Mighty Duck Farm. Yeah.
Like some of like the area around the house, there was like some car rides and stuff, and then like a tractor ride, They had the little dark ride with the little monsters in it. That's a cute. If you like cheesy little dark rides, they have like an old school style dark ride where it's like old Universal monsters, like living, but they're like little kids. But then there's also like petting zoo and stuff over there, reindeer, chickens and turkeys, and then a lot of wild roaming peacocks. I think we saw like 6 different ones, and they're so big and beautiful and loud and kind of scary, but they're really cool. So like I think you go to Flamingo Land, like between the peacocks and the wallabies, like you're really up close to these animals. Like you get closer to these animals, I think, than you get at a lot of zoos where animals are kind of like further away. They're separated from you. But at Flamingo Land, some of these guys are just wandering around doing their thing. But yeah, overall, a really cool park, and I'm very happy.
I was quite impressed with our experience there. Again, it's the zoo part just makes up for everything else. I mean, of course, the coast collections are honestly not bad, and I think everything runs quite well. You can see that it's well maintained. Could use a bit of color, maybe like some repaints here or there, but that's just nitpicking here. Again, you stay for the zoo. The zoo is just great. It was a nice, fresh day out. The early in the day was quite cold and rainy. We're like, oh, it's going to be a bad day. And then later, it was maybe a little bit sunny and fresh, but it was a pleasant place to walk around for a few hours. Definitely highly recommend. If you go to Flamingo Land, you're all the way out there because, again, it's not super convenient for most tourists. Definitely make sure you spend time in the zoo. You will be pleasantly surprised. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's gonna kind of just round up our episode about Flamingo Land, one of our shorter episodes because we don't combine it with a different park. And I'm glad we didn't because we are already almost at the hour mark. But it was exciting to talk about this park for a little bit. I think one of the biggest surprises on the entire trip, for sure. That, along with probably Fantasy Island.
We've got a great collection of coasters, very interesting collection, and then a very nice zoo.
Pretty well rounded. I mean, when you think about it, you got a major invert coaster, you have a loop, you have a beyond vertical looping coaster, you've got a flying coaster, you've got a launch motorbike coaster, you have a 10 inversion like classic looper coaster, you got a couple kitty coasters. I mean, like coaster collection wise, 8 coasters that are all quite different from each other, and even though they're not all very big,
very unique coasters.
I think it's actually, now that I think about it, a pretty well-rounded lineup.
It's one of the better coaster collections in the UK. It's certainly one of the largest, but it's still very strong, too. It has a nice variety.
And the park is just good vibes. I thought that the staff was pretty nice. All staff was quite nice. I don't think, they were pretty passionate about the park.
Yeah,
which is kind of nice. I love when people that work at the park are passionate really about the park. They're excited about the rides, which is nice. Like some
nice moments with like ride operators at like Kamali and stuff. And Sick, they were just really cool.
So really overall, good vibes. I feel like the parks that are maybe more out there in the UK are also the ones that have the best staff, and you can just kind of sense there's a hard knit, like
family-owned, independent, family-owned parks always have such a nice vibe. To keep these parks
going, you can really tell that there's passion involved, and that's always kind of nice. And Flamingo Land was a very pleasant surprise. So with that, we're going to ask you to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave us a little review, or on Spotify or Pocket Cast or wherever you're listening. We appreciate that. And of course, this is installation 4 of this series, The Great British Road Trip. We got 3 more episodes to go, a couple more parks to hit. But go ahead and listen to the past couple episodes and we know what you think of our opinion of Thorpe Park. Do you agree that Hyperia is not the best coaster there? Who knows? Alton Towers is Nemesis, Reborn, really all that. Who knows? That's all in the previous episodes. And we'll catch you guys on the next one next week. Bye.